Welcome back again, everyone. All right, I decided to do something a little bit different, okay? This is some old school information that needs to be new school, that needs to be brought back. And obviously, I'm starting with this. But let me tell you what book I'm using. I'm using the Todd Lamley, give him props, right? This is his book. Todd Lamley, his CCNA Study Guide version 6E. This is, I think the copyright is 2007. And yeah, I think this was the CCNA 20-120, if I remember correctly. Okay? And before you start saying, but wow, lads, that's old stuff, man. What are you doing with some old stuff? Because they're changing names, all right? They're doing things that people forget, all right? And I'll prove it to you as we go through the video. So first and foremost, right here, okay? You can only view and change, it says entering the CLI from a non-ISR or integrated service router. Okay, this is called user exec. This right here, here it is, user exec, we type enable. You can only view and change the configuration of a Cisco router in privilege mode. So this prompt right here is user exec. This is user mode, user exec, whatever you want to freaking call it. It's user mode, all right? This prompt right here is called what? What does it say here? Let me zoom it in so you guys can see it. Privileged mode. I was going to stay in silence for a little while. Moment of silence. Okay? Privilege mode. All right, is when you're in here that you type enable, not enable mode. That's something that they made up in the CCNA 200-301, or I think it started in 200-125. Whatever. You just answer what you need to answer for your test, but there it is, right freaking there. Okay? Not only that. Let me go here, 224. Yeah, I got these pages on lockdown. Table 4.1, user exec, which is the greater than symbol. Privilege exec mode. Global configuration, and then specific commands after that, right? Interface, router, what have you. And then setup mode. These are things that are not taught anymore. It's overview, right? It's just a quick overview. I don't even go into it anymore because they don't really want you to focus on that, but you need to focus on that because I see people typing IP addresses in privilege mode. Okay? Don't do that because in order for you to configure, you got to do it in global configuration mode. So when I tell people global configuration mode, they want to type global configuration mode. No. Okay? That is an exec mode that you're in. Like here, see? Global configuration mode. Now you're in router configuration mode because you're configuring RIP. So these are things. And look, you have your VTY lines. This doesn't exist anymore. We used to have an auxiliary line, right? Where you would actually plug in an external modem and you would dial in. So the same commands that we do for our VTY lines, we used to do it there as well. In our line con line, remember login synchronous, exec-1000, all that good stuff. That we used to have this. Does it exist anymore? Okay. We don't do that anymore. Okay. I'm not going to worry about that. But that privilege mode thing, yeah. So that's another thing. Another thing that they don't talk about anymore, it's the boot process of a router. Okay? Let's go down here. And I got examples for you. I got examples for you of different routers. Let me minimize this. Here's a 2800 series router. Here is this is a 2911. This is a 2811. And this is an 1841. Okay? Because people ask me, hey, Luz, what do you use a 2911? The features and the iOS that I need to do what I want to do, it's there. Okay? So I did use all three of these routers. Okay? And higher. Okay? When I was in Metro. All right? But the fact is, they all have different things. All right? But let's go back. Let's go back to where we were in the book. All right. So bringing up a router. I see a lot of colleges out there, they're putting serial interfaces, but are they putting smart serials? What is that? All right. Are they using WIC? Because these are WIC 2Ts or HWIC 2Ts. Or are they using WIC 1? We'll take a look at that. Because if I'm in college and somebody asks me that question, or somebody puts a lab out with serial cable, I'll be the first one. What interface are you using? Is this an ISR router or is this a fixed router? All right, is this a modular router that I'm putting modules in? I need to know which module you want me to put in there, boss. Okay, there's a difference between a smart serial and a WIC 1T. Okay, WIC 1T. There's a difference. The difference. All right, so the boot process. Okay, we need to understand, the boot process you see, let's go through it. So the system bootstrap, first thing, version, okay, well, here it goes. When you first bring up a Cisco router, it will run a post power on self-test, just like a computer. If it passes, then it will look for and load the Cisco IOS from flash. That is important. If an iOS file is present, hopefully, if not, you'll be in deep doo-doo. Okay? After the iOS loads, and after that, the iOS loads and looks for a valid config file. Where's it at? It's in startup config. Stored where? In NVRAM. You need to know that. That's why you type copy run start config. That's your hard drive. Okay? The following messages will appear as your router boots. All right? And this is he's using a 2811 router. So system bootstrap version, 12.4T, 13RT. There's some cryptic stuff back there, but still, whatever. You can always look that up. Cisco.com, blah, 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 blah. Okay, main memory. Here's your it's a CA and 2800 series, a platform, specifically 2811. All right, it tells you 64-bit of EEC enabled memory, upgrade ramen, blah, blah, blah. And then you see that when you see these pound signs, that means that it's decompressing because the iOS in flash is compressed, so it's decompressing it as it puts it into RAM. Okay, the pound signs are telling us that the iOS is being loaded into RAM. After the decompression into RAM, the iOS is loaded and starts running the router as shown below. And it says here some output has been cut, and then you can see here just a bunch of information. Important for you to know. Here's your Cisco 2811, how much memory is being used out of the memory that you have. 2 fast internet interfaces, 4 serial interfaces, 1 VPN module. How much DRAM, dynamic RAM do you have? All right, or RAM. 64 bits, okay, 239 bits, or bytes, sorry, of non-volatile memory. And then 62,720 K bytes of ATA flash. All right, so basically 256 MBs, 239K, and then 64 megabytes. Awesome. But now we're bringing up a non. See, that was an actual ISR router. It says it right here. Bring up a router. This is an ISR, integrated service router, that you're booting up, and it's looking for the iOS in where? Flash. Okay. So now we boot up a non-ISR router. Looks the same. It looks the same. Look at that. Everything's okay. It's decompressing. What's the big deal? It's the same thing. Wait a minute. But here is where it differs from the default boot up of the iOS ISR routers. If there's a configuration, if there isn't, there's none configuration in NVRAM, the router will broadcast looking for a valid one on TFTP. The only reason that would happen if the router senses carrier detect, meaning that you have stuff plugged into the router, to your LAN or serial cables, or to another router, whatever the case may be. And if the broadcast fails, it will then go in what's called setup mode. So if you have a non-ISR, which I doubt anybody today has non-ISR routers, it will send out a TFTP broadcast if it senses that it's plugged into something looking for an iOS. So it doesn't default to the flash, okay? You can do that by going into, and it says it right here, by changing the boot sequence of the routers for it just to look into it. But then you're in setup mode. All of you have seen this now, and I've told you, I really haven't told you, but it's setup mode. And I told you always, you can say yes by mistake. I always tell you say no. If you say yes, you go into this little friggin' wizard-driven thing that you don't want to be in. And just, all you can do is you Control-C out of it. Okay? So that's that. Okay? That's the boot process of the routers. Okay? Now, more importantly, which I want to get to the point here, 292. I want to look at the registry. That's why you see I did a search for that. The internal components of a router. They just left that out altogether. Yes, they have. Okay, so we know we have a bootstrap, stores the microcode of ROM. The bootstrap is used to bring up a router during initialization. It will boot up the router and load iOS. It does the post. ROM monitor mode. Hey, this is important. Stored in the microcode of ROM, the ROM monitor mode is used for manufacturing, testing, and troubleshooting. If you find yourself there, you're going to be in a world of hurt. Okay? Then you have a mini iOS called the RxBoot bootloader, again stored in ROM. Then in RAM, what's there? You got your ARD cache, you got your packet buffers, ARD cache, routing table. Also the software and data structures that allow routers to function. Running config is your RAM, stored in RAM. And most routers expand the iOS flash into RAM upon boot up. ROM, used to start and maintain the routers, holds the post. And then the bootstrap program as well in the mini iOS. Flash, that's your iOS. NRAM is your freaking hard drive. Okay? It's whatever you save. Copy run start. Or do WR. Or WR, what is it? Write mem. Whatever you guys do. That. And then the register. Dun, 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 2102. See? Hex numbers. 0x2102. That is the default setting of it. But you can change this. You can change this. And that's where we're going to. Okay? So here, just to show you different routers. Okay? This is the 1841. And you can take a look at me, zoom into it. You can see you have, do we have it here? No, you have your little flashcards right there. You put in, you have slots. You have your console. There's your auxiliary, which we don't have anymore. But look what we have. WIC 1 and WIC 2. Let me show you the difference, boys and girls. Ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Here, a WIC 1, 64 kilobits per second. Here we have 1.544 megabits per second. You have two serial ports. This is the friggin' difference, which is bandwidth. These have, I think it's 62 pins, 64 pins, and they're easily bent. People will just screw these things. You see how there's little holes right there? You can screw the slots in. Oh, these slots right here. They think they're hurricane clips. They will break like there's no tomorrow. Very fragile. Here, these are called smart serials. I don't know why. Okay. But you have more ports you can have on one router, and it has faster bandwidth. You still, and here, when we used to use these, you had to choose, well, not in modular routers, but in fixed routers, the S0, that was always the clock rates. All right. But we won't get into that. But this is the difference between WIC 1Ts and WIC 2Ts. All right. And if you're a student, now just leave that on. If you're a student that's taking a course in this, then I will be telling the instructor, hey, what's the dealio? What serial cable are we using? What cards are we using here? So here you have the 1841 router, or the 2011, sorry, the 2011 routers. You can see it has more modules that you can plug into it. It's SFPs. You still got your WIC 1Ts, but I think they've upgraded there to HWIC, which are faster. Okay, HWIC 2. It's the same thing, okay? If you're using serial, nobody freaking uses serial anymore. Why are people? If you're showing serial labs, you're connecting serial cables because you want to make believe it's a wide area network, or you want to just show the configuration for it, fine, okay? But nobody uses serial anymore, okay? And if you do, my God, get with it, okay? So 2011, more slots, okay? And again, if you look at the boot up process, okay, me going there, it's the same thing. You can see it's decompressing. It's really fast. Exactly what the book told you. Okay, system bootstrap, 12.4, 1R, all this stuff. And you see it's slowly booting up. And then you get into setup mode. If you type yes, whoops, Control C takes you out of it. Okay, no big deal. But this is your 2811, right? So if you do a show version, one of the things that they'll tell you, show ver, you can see down here, the register setting is 210X, and here it is right here. This is the Cisco 2811 router. So this gives you information that you need to know. Licensing issues. Sometimes I use that for this purpose. All right, we can do licensing stuff. But let's get to the registry. This is very important. Okay. So this is a 2911, which is I use every day, right? And we go from user mode and we type enable, go to privilege mode. Because if you type disable, we go back to user mode, not disable mode. Okay, so we're in privilege mode. Again, for your test, answer what they want you to answer. Okay, and then we do show version. Okay, you can see here the system bootstrap 15.1, 4, and 4, blah, blah, blah. Image, there's your flash, there's your what you would copy, right, to an FTP or TFTP server for backup purposes. All right, and then you go down here, there's your 0x2102. Now you can mess around with this, okay? Just like in the boot up process, we talked about that there's a ROM monitor mode. You do not want to be there. That is a dark, dirty dungeon. You don't want to be there, okay? So I'm going to make it boot to that. Conf T, I'm going to say, not synth, the CIF. Config register 0x2100. Because 01, remember? It boots the iOS from ROM, not from Flash. 2100 boots you straight into ROM. And I'm doing this on purpose. This is not something you want to do. Okay? Do WR and do a neutral version. You see right here on next reload, that's where we're going. So what are we going to do? Reload. Control Z. Reload. And there we are. You find yourself here, either we did it on purpose, or your iOS, it couldn't find it anywhere. It took a dump. All right. So if you type in lowercase help here, so these are commands. You can boot to an external process, config to change the registry settings, dir to list the file system, help to help you, we'll just type right now, reset to restart it. Okay. Set, and the most famous one is because you don't have an iOS, and then you need to do a TFTP DNLD. And that's crazy. TFTP DNLD. Oops. Not something. Oh, that's right. TFTP DNLD. Jesus. So then you literally, these are optional commands, but you need to type, literally, you need to type all this, plus the IP address of this unit, all this, plus the subnet mask of this unit, and so forth. So all this stuff right here, okay? This side, you type with this information in order, and you better be plugged in, and hopefully you'll find it, and it'll load it into your router, okay? This is ramen. There it is right there. You don't want to be there. Normally, that is when if you find yourself there, is commonly your iOS just it crashed and it couldn't boot up, so it booted you into there so you can troubleshoot. But also it could be 21, you use it because you want to change registry settings because you can't get in the router. So in this case, I'm just going to set it back. I'm going to take I'm going to do a config, which is configure registry 0x2142. What does that mean? That means, listen, ignore what's in NVRAM and just let me in. Okay, ignore what's in NVRAM and just let me in. Hit enter, and then I'm going to reset. And it's going to decompress. Instead of, it's just going to take me to the setup mode. Okay, and then I'll be able, oh my God, these shorts are getting tight. Okay, it's just going to let me in the router. I mean, there's no configs anyway, but that's what that does. And if you look at the registry setting, show ver, there it is, 2142. Okay? You got to be very careful with that. You got to be very, very careful with that. Okay? And this is a trick for all of you that if you're using the packet tracer and the instructor puts a certain password, you didn't read the instructions, and you want to bypass it, in the packet tracer, it's very easy. Let's create a password real quick. Enable password Cisco, whatever. You're just creating a password, right? Let's exit, enable, and let's say I don't know how to log in. Oh my God, I don't know the password. The instructor didn't give it to me. Go to config, go to G00, go back to CLI. And there, you're in the router. And then just change it to whatever you want. All right, but let's say he disabled the config, or let's say that you're in a real world situation and you just can't log into your router. All right, you just can't log in, period. Right, you can't log into it. So what you need to do, obviously you don't hit a tab, you will go to the back of it and hit the power button. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna turn off the router. Let me zoom in. I'm gonna turn off the router. Now there's no configs in here, so I'm not concerned. All right, but in a real world scenario, you better be concerned. All right, so you turn off the router. Let's say you can't log in. You turn off the router, you turn it back on. You'll be booting up and you do a Control C. It could be a Control C, it could be a Control Pause Break. There's many different types of break commands they can use. It could be just Control Break, okay? So you find yourself at ramen again, all right? It's already at 2142, okay? So really we would want to change it to 2142 so we can bypass the passwords and put our own passwords in, okay? But in this case, I just wanted to show you that break command. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to change, I'll leave it as such, because normally we would do config. Freaking I go around my keyboard. Config 0x2142, not 45. Oh, config 0x2142. All right, and then reset. All right, it's gonna come back up to setup mode, because that's normally what you do when you can't get into your router. Real world scenario, the break commands on boot up, turn it off, turn it back on, Control Break, boom. Then you takes you to ramen. Change the registry by typing config 0x2142 to bypass NVRAM and just let me in. But once you're in, ladies and gentlemen, once you're in, you better do this first. Copy what's in the start, which is your NVRAM, into your RAM. Because you have a production router that's fully configured, okay, in NVRAM. So if you do finally get an iOS in there, you want to copy what's in your starter config, because your iOS, where it's in your flash. So they're in different compartments. Okay, so copy start run, it'll copy it to your running config. Obviously there's nothing there. Okay, and then you make any changes you want, config T, and let's say you do enable password mango, whatever. Okay, you start changing passwords, putting IP addresses, all these things. And then if you want to go back to the default setting of 2102 or 2102, you do config register 0x2102. Do WR. Now the question is always like, hey lads, do we need to work in your register as 0x2102? No, you don't have to. Show ver. You don't have to. You can leave it right here. That's fine, as long as it has this behind it. Because you want your router to be in 2102 in order for it to look at NVRAM. Okay? So if you're at 2142 because you had to do a password bypass, okay, fine. Just make sure you change the registry back to 2102. Okay? So if there is a reboot or brownout, whatever the case may be, all right, it'll boot up and it will be instructed on the boot up process to look at the NVRAM, at the flash, I'm sorry. Look at the flash, I'm sorry, back up. It'll be instructed to look for the configurations in your NVRAM and load them, all right, into RAM. That's what 2102, and that is the default setting. This is something that they've kind of overlooked, more or less. They don't, talk about it much, and people complain when you're doing basic stuff like this, but it's something that you need to understand. All right, because if you're out there, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It happened to me working at a tech school where we had a brownout over the weekend. They came back up in ramen. They didn't understand why, and it was just because they were in 0x2142. Okay, I think it was 0x2142. They had no configs. And I said, man, just change it. All right, they were booting up into ramen, so I think somebody actually did it deliberately and changed them, but it didn't load any configs. It didn't load any configs, so they were just booting up into ramen. So yeah, more than likely somebody changed it to 0x2100 to boot into ramen. So maybe somebody was doing some work on the routers, they needed to be in there, what have you, for whatever reason, and they just never changed it back. So if you boot up to ramen, nothing, no configurations are going to go anywhere. You're going to be no will hurt. Something as simple as this, where you just boot into ramen, config 0x2102, enter, reset, boom, done. There's all your configurations. Okay, and that's the way it is. That's what this is important. Learning your registers, 0x2102, 0x2142 to bypass, 2102 is the default, 21042 is to bypass, and 2100, okay, is to go straight into ramen for troubleshooting purposes. 2101 is for you to boot from ROM, okay? That's what it's doing instead of the flash. All right, so know your registers, okay? They may not ask you a question on that. They may ask you one, but real world, you better know them. Because if you need to troubleshoot, whatever, somebody can be a practical joker in there and change things around, and then what? Disgruntled employee. So know your register. This is some old school stuff. Again, from 2007. And they barely touch up on it in the latest certifications. Router still got components. Router still has a registry. All right, so practice it. Practice it. And it's safer to practice it on the packet tracer. See you in the next one.